What is going down, squad? We are back again with another State of the Franchise episode with Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. How are we doing, Jason? I know you're fresh off of Las Vegas. Hopefully you're recovered by now. How are you doing, man?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Fully recovered. It was a rough day or two on my way back, like having my body adjust from not only the non-sleep of trying to get as much work done as possible, but the Vegas shenanigans where there is no time, it feels like in Vegas. Like time, it's like literally the Twilight Zone. Everything stands still, everything's always open, and it never feels like time is moving, and it always feels like the same thing. So when I got back, it was quite the adjustment, especially after I had to sit there and take a whole other flight that was canceled because I was supposed to be back the day before. So I had to spend an extra day in Vegas, which
darn.
may sound cool to people, but I guarantee you I was trying to get home and I was fighting for my life, man.
I feel it. Hey, Vegas is a dangerous place, but I'm sure you were staying in line because I know you had a bunch of work to do. And again, let's hop right into it, because the last time we spoke, you had came on here and you had said that you had heard it on good authority that, hey, Deebo Samuel, again, the Deebo saga was way more in front of us last week. But leading up until the draft, you came on here and said, I have it on good authority that the 49ers are probably going to wait until around pick 10 to make their ultimate decision. Now, I'm sure you've seen the draft compensation that was submitted in regards to a Deebo trade from the Jets. We heard later that the Detroit Lions offered, I believe, the 32nd and a third rounder. The 49ers declined. What was your whole kind of feeling and gut and just your overall takeaway of the Deebo Samuel situation leading up until pick 10?
Yeah, what I heard from a person that I very much trust was, they were going to wait to see what would happen on the clock, field as many offers, see what happens. But in real time, it sounded like in the media room, the 49ers had no reason or no real authority to move him, or they never wanted to at that point. There's nothing wrong with listening, but they never really wanted to move him. And with what the Lions offered, we were in the room when it came out. It essentially was like a pick swap. When you really look at like the compensation, which it doesn't seem like the 49ers won. So again, the 49ers were kicking tires. What's the season that we call this? Due diligence, just listening. But at that time, it sounded like when we got into the media room that they were like, I was like, they're not going to move anybody at all or anything like that. And then when you got a chance to listen to the press conference after, Kyle basically said, yeah, I hope we can fix this. I believe we can fix this. And they haven't wavered on that. So good for them, man. They never really got tempted with any offer because it seems like they never really wanted to do anything.
Absolutely. And of course, Deebo Samuel was able to make a couple waves yesterday with more social media activity. Again, liking the post from a quote essentially from John Lynch saying that they expect Deebo Samuel to remain. His brother reposted the similar post with the crossed finger emojis. Do you feel like now that we've made our way through the draft, even though we've heard reports from Jamery Fowler, Deebo still dug in, he still wants a trade, still wants out, do you kind of feel like we're heading towards resolution? We're heading towards a situation where Deebo Samuel is going to be walking out of that tunnel week 1?
Yeah, I think that he is. And I've always felt that he would. And for the same people who were like me, who looked at the social media stuff and said, well, this isn't nothing, but it's not everything. For the people who completely freaked out when Deebo scrubbed his Instagram and liked all those posts, now you might as well just take a victory parade at this point, because if social media is pointing you to whatever, I mean, he liked 2 things that
he's coming back now, baby.
Right, so he's coming back. So it's funny to me how there's certain people who are so dug in with, well, Deebo scrubbed everything, he's gone, and then all of a sudden he likes 2 things. Well, that doesn't really mean anything. Well, dude, do you want him to leave, or is it nothing? Is it everything? So again, this whole social media thing, it was something, but it wasn't everything. So if you felt like it was everything before when Deebo scrubbed everything, then right now you need to be parading down the street.
Energy, essentially.
Yeah, that's it. Keep the same energy with all of that stuff, because if you thought that he was gone before, all of this points to him staying now, and you can't flip-flop now at this point. So it's really interesting to see the reactions to people who are so invested in their, I guess, opinion on, here's what I heard. Well, people are being smug and dismissing people who are worried about Deebo Samuel. But then Deebo likes a bunch of posts, and it's not, well, it's done. It's, well, I don't really think that matters. Well, what matters then? Do you want him gone or do you want him to stay? Or do you
Right.
want to just be right? Here we are again, May 4th, second season of this. People just want to be right. They don't want to get it right. And that's the weirdest part.
Very true. And we talk about this all the time. Everything's fluid in the NFL. Things could be looking like they're getting done. Offers can be getting submitted. They can be getting thought about. But at the end of the day, the 49ers did what they did. They kept Deebo Samuel, and everything that they've talked about since then is keeping him on the roster. So if he's liking posts of him returning, you should be happy about that, because that means the 49ers are getting their unicorn back, or it's heading towards getting to that spot. So that's good news for the San Francisco 49ers. Got to be fluid, got to be able to move with the waves. And those waves led us, obviously, to the San Francisco 49ers not trading up into the draft. They stood pat at pick 61. They come away with USC edge Drake Jackson. Tell me about that pick. Tell me about the moments leading up to it. What were your overall thoughts? Do you like the pick?
Well, before we get into that, one more thing on the Deebo thing.
Okay.
Just real quick. The AJ Brown trade and contract has really put the 49ers in a great spot. When you look at those numbers for AJ Brown, that is completely doable for Deebo Samuel.
A lot of window dressing on that contract, too.
Exactly. Who's represented by the same guy. So when you look at that, everything starts to change. Money talks, and now all of a sudden Deebo is happy again because now you can move in that way. And you could be mad in the moment, but when you see them dollar signs and everything, guarantee that tune changes very quickly. But yeah, about Drake Jackson.
Oh, really quick. I actually want to kind of piggyback
Yeah.
onto that.
Mhm.
I was talking to a buddy of mine, and we were talking about the whole Deebo situation and how it played out and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, it's kind of funny when it's all with it all said and done. It kind of feels like Tory Dandy leveraged Deebo's value and the asking price to get Hollywood Brown traded to the Cardinals and able to get AJ Brown to the Eagles and ultimately paid. It kind of feels like this whole situation with Deebo just ultimately backfired in his face, and and essentially his agent was able to use all that public noise and the public price and all those types of things, and he got two of his other players moved. And one got a contract, one got a fifth-year extension picked up. Really feels like the whole situation with Deebo, at least in his vacuum of a camp, kind of backfired a little bit.
You know what's really funny about the Hollywood Brown thing, and then we can get into what everybody's here for. The Ravens drafted him at pick 23. They got back pick 23 3 years later. And Peter King made the best analogy I probably have ever heard about the situation. It's like you went in, you bought a BMW for $35,000, you drove it for 3 years, you walked back into the BMW dealer, and they gave you $35,000. Some teams are better at this than
That's
others.
That's a win, right? We're calling that a win, baby.
The Baltimore Ravens are better at this than many other teams.
Phenomenal draft, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So that's a great point, though. That's a great point, because a lot of people were talking about like, oh, I don't know, the Cardinals is whatever, not a big deal. I was like, Hollywood Brown's kind of good, especially pair him up with Kyler Murray, his old college quarterback. Might be something there. But again, the Ravens
with
are the ones with the
true
winners.
Sorry.
What was that?
Pair him up with DeAndre. Oh, my bad.
Oh,
sorry. Did I say that? Was that too soon? Ooh. My bad.
Too soon. That boy's juicing right now.
Ooh.
My fantasy teams are not happy. I have DeAndre Hopkins on almost all my dynasty squads. So
imagine having DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley on your dynasty squads right now. You were sitting pretty 2 years ago. Eek.
Absolutely wild. But let's get back into the 49ers pick at 61. Again, they go USC edge Drake Jackson. Thoughts leading up to the pick? Is he someone that you wanted? Did you want someone else? And were you happy with the pick overall?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people had first-round grades on Drake Jackson. And the buzz in the room was, he's still available? And I remember looking at Jordan and saying, dude, Drake Jackson. And Jordan's saying the same thing. Jordan was tweeting it out like, jokingly, thinking that eventually the pick was going to be made. You get to 61 and Drake Jackson's still there. You have to be absolutely ecstatic when you talk about Drake Jackson being there at 61 and then getting him. Right now, I feel like he's not exactly ready to step into a 3-down role, but he's absolutely ready to step into this D forward pass rushing specialist role, which is something that is amazing in a rotation. But if he adds a little strength, works on his game a little bit with Chris Kocurek, he could absolutely be on the field as much as Nick Bosa. And when you're looking at the pick of 61 and that's what you're getting, that's the reason that there were so many people that were looking to move out of the top 10, because there was so much depth later on. And that is what is kind of come to fruition for the 49ers. I love this pick, man. We'll talk strengths and weaknesses, but as far as right now, he's ready to step in right now as a pass rusher opposite Nick Bosa. And you're talking about Drake Jackson, Nick Bosa, Kinlaw, and Armstead to start. Okay, here we go. This is a good line right here to start up.
Absolutely. Would you say that the 49ers defensive line group is the best position group on the roster, or does another position group rival that position?
No, it's the defensive line. It's not really close unless the Brock Purdy pick moves the needle for you, because the 49ers have 5 quarterbacks if you include Kyle Juszczyk, 6 if you include Jason Poe. No, but it's a defensive line. You look at the Greenway pickup, Kerry Hyder's back, Jordan Willis, the starting lineup that we just talked about, Samson Ebukam. It just reeks of a team that had it going at the end of the year, and that's how you close out games at the end of the year. Pass rush with fresh legs. And then we're going to talk about another draft pick who's going to be added to that line too. Mm-hmm. It is by far the deepest, and it's by far showing that the 49ers had 2 strategies. One that they've always stuck to, which was trenches, and we'll talk about offensive line and defensive line. And 2, literally try to draft or sign every single hyphenated last name player that was available in the draft. I love that strategy because that's big brain stuff right there. See, gotta start thinking outside of the box, man. You gotta start thinking outside the box.
Start connect those dots, baby. Put it on a linear timeline. Start connecting those dots. You're onto something there. Do you see a position with Drake Jackson where he could play inside, he could play outside, he could play base down, he could play as a speed rusher, pass rush specialist? Because you talked about it. He doesn't have to come in and play 80% of the snaps, 85% of the snaps. He can come in at his own pace. They can put him in specific situations and sub packages. They could do all different kinds of things. And he has, the length, his arms. I mean, you love that from a pass rusher. And especially if you can kick that guy inside. And we saw guys like Arden Key have success. Charles Omenihu had a little bit of success over the guard as well. It feels like they got a guy that not only can rush the passer, right, but they could do a lot of different things with them.
Yeah, and he, as big as he is, I feel like right now he's still a bit of a finesse rusher. But I feel like that could be corrected with Chris Kocurek. Once he learns a little bit more, once he adds more moves to the bag, I mean, you're not going to compare him to Nick Bosa, but once you get more moves to the bag, you get a little bit more violent. That would be the only weakness that I see. But he has moves, finesse-wise, that he can win outside and inside with. And that's what I think is important. It's a good starting point. And I think the 49ers still, again, rely on the traits, bet on them, bet on Chris K to get the most out of them. And I think that's where 49er fans should be excited.
What do you think his sack production looks like as a rookie? If you had to put a number on it, the way too early prediction for sack production.
If he got 5 sacks this year, I'd be super happy. And again, sacks don't necessarily tell the story. I'm a big, and this is the raging debate on pass rushes, I'm big on pressures over sacks.
Yes.
Pressures can lead to sacks. You can get sacks by just doing your job and being in a spot. There's no disrespect to the guys.
You can get sacks after you got completely stonewalled on a play.
Exactly. And the quarterback moves right in your way and you get a hand on him and he's down, right? Does that mean that you did something? No, right? So pressures is what you should be looking at. Now, fortunately, we don't have to worry about that with Nick Bosa because he gets the pressures, the sacks, the tackles for loss, everything, right? Like he does it all, right? But for me, pressures are a better indicator of how you're winning, how much you're winning, and how much impact you have because sacks don't necessarily tell the entire story.
Absolutely. So it's going to be what would a win rate maybe prediction or maybe a pressure rate be more appropriate for this particular conversation?
See, this is a really good one. This is the one that I think people should be talking about. The pass rush win rate, it depends on who you're asking, I think, more than anything. And I think that that's a little bit more subjective. And so are pressures, right? Certain sites would give you pressures for whatever it is, right? Like it's, let's say, 25 pressures one site, 21 for the other. But I think, and to quote the great Rich Madrid, when you pop on the tape, you'll notice who's doing what. So I wouldn't necessarily look at a number and say this is the number he needs to be at. Impact wouldn't necessarily be able to be told through stats. And I think that if you're watching a guy consistently blowing guys up, even if he's not necessarily credited a pressure, and that's fine, but he's still doing his job. So it's hard for me to put a number on those things because certain sites have different ways of dictating what they think it is. And you can go on one and say, well, he had this rate, and someone will say this one, and you guys could yell about whatever it is. But if you watch the tape, you're going to find out who's actually really, really impacting the game.
Absolutely. That's a great explanation, by the way. So let's go to the next pick because this pick was a little bit controversial, at least with some of the SDS. And we polled the group and we did individual grades for each pick. This initially was, I think, one of the least favorite picks of the draft in regards to Ty Davis Price, running back out of LSU, selected at pick 93. Tell me what you think. Are you agreeing? Do you feel like it was a bit of a reach, or do you understand the pick and you kind of, what's your thought process overall with the whole running back Ty Davis Price at 93?
One thing for sure, two things for certain. Kyle Shanahan does not care about what you think about a running back, and he'll take him wherever he feels is necessary. Joe Williams
has entered the chat.
Trey Sermon. So, look, I like the player. Don't necessarily love the pick spot. But who cares down the line, right? Like, who cares down the line?
It doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't matter anymore now at this point. But also, if you get the desired production and you get exactly what you're looking for the guy, then who cares when you got him? Bill Belichick, greatest coach in the world. For me, we need to have a discussion about him as a general manager. But if Cole Strange balls
out. You don't like the Cole Strange pick?
Not that high. I love Cole Strange. Did you hear Sean McVay clown him? Sean McVay's laughing like they had a bunch of first round picks.
I don't think Belichick thought he was going to last to the next time they picked, and he had to get his guy.
That's another point, right? Get your guy. I don't care, right? We don't have to agree with it. But if you get the desired production and exactly what you're looking for, the few notes that I have on him, tough runner, and he actually is slept on in terms of burst. I think that's the part that people are like, well, he's not as fast. But I think he gets to his speed maybe faster than Elijah Mitchell at certain points. Mm-hmm. And he profiles like a closer, meaning when you need tough yards at the end of the game to finish the game, he profiles like that. One more thing, he's amazing in pass pro. And you know that you can't see the field if you can't pass pro. One more thing, what if this is being pitched to Deebo Samuel? Look, we got another guy here. Now, we don't have to give you the ball as much running the ball, right? Maybe we can dial those back to 3, 4, as opposed to 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So all of those things put together, it's fine. But the pick at location, I think that's what more people are worried about than they are the player. The player is fine. He went to LSU. He didn't go to some gym, some school, Division 5, whatever it is. Yeah, right, exactly. But more and more that I dig into it, I like the pick a little bit more. But people, I think, are just more wrapped up in who they could have had. And I should tell myself this so I can let go of the Terry McLaurin, Jalen Hurd thing. Sorry.
Did you want someone else in that particular pick that you maybe were eyeing? Maybe the 49ers are going to look back year 2 down the road. Maybe could have got this guy, kicked maybe TDP to pick 105. Any thoughts there?
Not necessarily, but I think the Cincinnati jumped the 49ers because the 49ers had their eyes on Cam Taylor-Britt. Yeah. And Cam Taylor-Britt would have profiled as a pretty nice safety, maybe corner who can hit. He's a thumper. He's a big guy. So I think Cincinnati had a little intel on who the 49ers actually liked. And then Shanahan was like, well, whatever, at this pick, we're just going to get my guy. And that's it. Yeah.
They're talking to Trent Taylor. Trent Taylor was letting him know all the secrets. Denim Dungeon says Nick Cross potentially at 93 again. And we're going to get into it, but 49ers didn't draft a safety, right? We got some undrafted free agent safeties.
Didn't they?
Didn't
they?
Did they?
Didn't they? Maybe. We'll talk about them when we get to them.
All right. I like it. Stick around. You're going to find out more. So overall, back to the running back pick. Do you see this as an indictment on Trey Sermon? Is this like a straight like admission and or we also understand the San Francisco 49ers need depth at running back. It's a tale as old as time. Ever since Kyle Shanahan has taken over, they are consistently hurting at depth. Their injuries, depth is a concern. Could it just be more depth, more bruising backs to add to the mix, or has Trey Sermon been put on notice?
I could see how that could be the perception. And Matt Maiocco alluded to as much after the press conference, in which he said that they believe that Trey Sermon isn't the guy that they thought. We spoke to someone at the Combine, Brad, that was very candid in talking about how he doesn't believe Trey Sermon's a good fit. That's me paraphrasing. He wasn't as nice saying that. And it's someone who's actually played in the league. So it was shocking to hear.
Jersey right next to me. I could literally
really
his jersey. Yeah.
Wow. Well, we don't want to put him out there, even though Maiocco did. Maiocco said his name.
I've already talked about it.
Go for it.
This man wasn't liking. He wasn't too thrilled with the.
He wasn't as nice as the way I put it. Let's just put it like that. He was not as nice as the way I put it. But I think it could possibly put someone else. Dean.
We don't speak about that name here anymore.
No, Dean, the thing about me is I need to go to therapy because I need to let go of grudges. Grudges hold you back, and it holds you back from being happy. And for me, I'll get over it one day, like I told you, Dean. It's not going to be today. It's not going to be tomorrow. It'll eventually be down the line. It's like the ex that you had a chance with. You had one date, and they dipped off, and you realized the one that got away. The draft could have started Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, and that would have been amazing. Either way, in terms of this, I think it might be, is Jeff Wilson on notice? Right? Is Jermichael Hasty on notice? Because Jeff Wilson, while spot starter, we enjoy what he does when he was on the field, wasn't necessarily as effective this year. So
definitely wasn't. I don't think he was healthy this year either.
No, that's what I mean, right? So, and who knows? Did that, take away from him because you can't discount any of that. The thing is, it's easy to say, hey, it's Trey Sermon that's on notice. It's easy to say that. I don't know that for sure, but it's certainly from the outside looking in could be perceived that way. And then we have to go through this whole process of, well, damn it, you took Trey Sermon in the third round also. Who else could you have had at that point? And now I'm really going to get mad because you let a team trade in front of you for a running back that if you drafted, you're not taking Tyrion Davis-Price in the third round. You're not taking anyone. And you know what name I'm about to say.
Hey, you got to say it for the brand, baby.
If you think I'm mad about Jalen Hurd and Terry McLaurin, I am much more mad that the 49ers allowed the Denver Broncos to trade up for Javonte Williams. And then you get stuck with Trey Sermon. I
don't think there's been a conversation I've had with Jason where we talk about running back and he doesn't talk about the San Francisco 49ers passing on Javonte Williams. I'm just going to put that out there.
Why did John Lynch do a favor for them? Because he used to play for Denver? That's ridiculous, man. Oh, my God. Help your team, man. Don't help them. Here's what I think happened. Hey, look, we'll let you move up for Javonte, but remember us when it's time to move Jimmy.
Wink, a wink.
And guess what? The best laid plans of mice and men. Javonte's not here and Jimmy's still here. It's ridiculous, man.
And they go ahead and take Mr. Russell Wilson. They're like, we don't need Jimmy. Sorry. No, thank you.
It's a double cross. Denver.
Double cross.
I'm watching you.
Ever since they gave us Adam Peters, they're like, you owe us one. and they've been definitely cashing in on that for sure. But so overall, though, again, I would agree with you. I think the initial shock came from one, I didn't scout anyone on LSU's offense particularly, so TDP is like I was like, oh, I got to go watch this right away to see if I like it. And then two, it's the Trey Sermon PTSD, the Joe Williams PTSD kind of creeping in there. But also too, we have a different running back coach. We have a different run game coordinator. We have a different assistant head coach, Anthony Lynn, and I think it's Forster is now the run game coordinator. So do you think this could be also an indication of kind of where the run game is going to go? Maybe more inside runs, maybe more traps, more RPO, more power, kind of that type of scheme standpoint?
I think the optimist in all of us said that Trey Sermon was picked to be in unison. Oh, I think, oh man, that threw me off.
It's one of those episodes, Jason. It's one of those episodes.
All right. I think that the Trey Sermon pick, the optimist in me was, well, Trey Sermon, Aaron Banks, Trey Lance, they're all kind of in the same lane and in kind of the same scheme and things that they want to do. And then Anthony Lynn, inside run, kind of made us optimistic when we found out that he was going to be part of the run game because of how effective he knows how to run the ball. Maybe that's the wrinkle that they add this season, especially when you consider that Trey is going to be starting. So yeah, that could be it for sure. And I think he fits that perfectly. So I think that's a very good way of looking at it. And if you're going to look at it that way, then you definitely can't dismiss Trey Sermon at this point because the 49ers are going to need that depth going into the season, especially if they're going to appease Deebo Samuel and let him know, hey, we're not going to leave you out to dry with 10, 12, 14 carries. We're still going to use you as a wide receiver.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I do agree that JaMychal Hasty, I think, out of more than anyone, is going to be the one who's put on notice. Other than that, I think the running backs that they brought in, they're pretty solid, and you can envision it's going to be Jeff Wilson, it's going to be Elijah Mitchell. Trey Sermon is probably not going to get cut, barring some craziness, but it's going to be a nice running back room of TDP and those other running backs that I mentioned. So, and we know they need depth at the position. So they got a veteran, they got two second-year players and a rookie. So we'll see how it goes. But the 49ers were able to then pick not too far from there at pick 105. They were able to take offensive tackle Spencer Burford out of UTSA. What were your thoughts on the pick? What's your initial reaction? Do you like it? Where do you see him ultimately playing for the 49ers?
Did they say Burford in front of Danny Gray?
Oh, excuse me.
I know you want to talk about O-line. I know you want to talk about the O-line.
I jumped the gun. And how did I forget good old Danny Phantom? At 105, the San Francisco 49ers took SMU wide receiver Danny Gray. Now talk to me about the speedster out of Dallas.
One of the best plays that we saw in Senior Bowl practice was Danny Gray one-on-one with an absolute bomb from Malik Willis into the end zone. And that was immediately my time to say, okay, who the hell was that? And you start to watch him, 4.33 speed at the combine, right? He's just like flying by. And that's when it's like, okay, man, this is real now at this point. Right now, he's profiling for me more in the slot, but I think he can play outside eventually. But here's what I want to talk about. Because, everybody knows the negative, right? He can fix the drops. I think he can fix the drops. Just get in front of the jugs machine and go a little bit.
I mean, the 49ers had a wide receiver who had the highest drop rate in the NFL. He happened to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Sure did. And, our tight end drops passes as well. So that's okay, right? You just got to make the plays, the bigger plays when you need them, right? Here's my tinfoil hat. Danny Gray signifies a philosophy switch because of who's going to be starting at quarterback this year. And he doesn't fit with Jimmy Garoppolo. Fits with a Trey Lance to throw the ball down the field. And let's face it, the 49ers haven't had a speedster like this since, brace yourself, people, Marquise Goodwin. That was the last time the 49ers had somebody who
I remember being so hyped about Goodwin. Like, wide receiver one.
Hey, he had that 5-game stretch too with Jimmy.
Like, Jimmy legendary.
Jimmy and Goodwin won me like fantasy titles because they were just so in sync.
They
But
were on a different level. Those
it's
5,
gonna help,
just the 5 games.
right? And it's gonna help lighten the boxes, and it's gonna help blow the defense, blow defenses tops off. It's just it fits so well. He fixes the drops, but he's still a yards after the catch guy. He fixes the drops. The 49ers have 3 weapons, and right now they're just gonna be situational at this point because Juwan Jennings isn't going anywhere. Juwan Jennings has settled very nicely into the Kendrick Bourne role of third down, red zone guy. You know, when you need a clutch play, that's
His role doesn't
not
have
going.
to change, right? It could just kind of stay what it is.
Right, and it could be situational. If the third down's a little bit longer and you need to open things up, it may not be Juwan Jennings. It may be Danny Gray on there. So I think that's what's really cool about it. He can ease himself into it. I think that's the one weakness. That's it, is the drops. But situationally, he fits. And I think it's showing you who's really going to start no matter who is here. If push comes to shove, that happens. And they're trying to change the offense towards Trey Lance. And I think that's the part that I found the most eye-opening.
It really does feel like with the pieces that they've added, you know, we talked about the running back. We're going to talk about the offensive line. I kind of jumped the gun a little bit there. But
it's all right.
With these pieces, and we saw it, right? When Trey Lance was actually playing, we didn't really like, what is this offense? Like, what is this identity? Like, what are they trying to accomplish? And it was really hard to figure out. And we really didn't get start to see glimpses of what it could be until they kind of settled in the second half of the Texans game. Well, again, we talked about the coaching staff. We talked about them. You know, Kyle didn't even go to the combine. He had to stay behind, put the coaching staff together. They had to work on scheme. So it does feel like we could see a lot different offense that we've seen in, you know, historically with Kyle based on the quarterback.
I love it. And that's the thing is I'm not here to say that Danny Gray and Jimmy couldn't work, right? Because they could just throw him a tunnel screen, something like that. Oh my goodness. What's up, Don Burr? Hey, love Jameson Williams, Don Burr. I love Jameson Williams. Got my first share of him in a rookie dynasty draft at 107. Didn't even flinch and took him. Yes, 100%. And I don't necessarily want to just sit here and say that Jimmy wouldn't work with Danny Gray, right? You know, throw him a little slant and he'll take it. But I think ultimately what Danny Gray offers goes with Trey Lance more than it does Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's showing you the wrinkles that they're adding because they know what's coming this year. So I think that for the people who are still a little bit nervous about who's going to start, oh, you can't bench him, I think they're starting to just say, you know what, we've got to like rip this Band-Aid off one way or another, and they're doing that right now.
So obviously Deebo's here to stay. Was this Deebo insurance, or do you really just see how he's a great fit? Again, you look at guys like Ray McLeod, you might even be able to comp Ray a little bit to Danny Gray. Just feels like, you know, they're just building, or a little insurance. What do you think about that?
No, I think they're just building, because when you look at early on in the year when Brandon Aiyuk was in the doghouse, injured, whatever the hell was going on, they were using Brandon Aiyuk on clear routes to get Deebo open in the middle of the field on those drift routes. That's exactly what Danny Gray can do now with both of them on the field. So I wouldn't necessarily.
We got a quarterback now who can actually hit him.
Exactly. So now I don't necessarily see that as that. I just see it as a complementary piece, just putting more pressure on the defense and putting defenders in a bind. Okay, you could usually let this guy run past you because the guy back there isn't going to throw it. Now you have to defend everywhere because this guy has a cannon.
Absolutely. Danny Gray was one of my favorite picks. I think he was legit. So I'm super excited to see what he can do in this offense. But now let's talk about the big boys. Let's talk about the big hog mollies up front. Again, with the 4th pick at 134. The San Francisco 49ers select Spencer Burford, O-line, UTSA. What do you think of the pick? Where do you see him playing ultimately?
I mean, it just goes with this team's philosophy in terms of drafting for versatility. And that's not just one position group. Positionless football really goes across the board everywhere at this point, right? Free safety, strong safety, doesn't matter. They move around. Linebackers, they're going to move around. Every single person on the line basically can play more than one position, and Spencer Burford fits that perfectly. I mean, 6'4", 304 pounds, just a little bit undersized for tackle. So I think he profiles more as a guard now at this point. But he spoke at length at the combine because our guy, Jordan Elliott, who absolutely smashed the draft coverage, actually spoke to him and talked to him about Trent Williams, and he could not stop glowing about Trent Williams. And he continues to say, I would love to play with him. Now you got your shot, buddy. So I think that we have to start looking at it now. Is he here to replace Trent? I think he profiles more as a guard. Is he here to replace Trent, or is he here to be moved around? Is he here for competition? What do we know about Aaron Banks? What do we know about Jalen Moore? Again, there's nothing wrong with bringing guys in that are athletic and that can move, because while I don't think he's as athletic, he wins with instincts and technique, in my opinion. And that is very important. So I really like the pick. Again, as this draft went along, I felt better and better about these picks just because of how they fit and how much depth is going to be there. You don't want to have to rely on, whatever. Tom Compton played well. We don't have to keep slamming him or anything like that. But it's good to have
better than I anticipated.
I mean, all of us, right?
Yeah.
But the good thing is that you have this depth, you have young guys, you have them compete, and you start to really find out what's in the cupboard. And there's nothing wrong with having more and more O-line depth, especially because this team is going to just build and build through the trenches, as you see that they've done basically in every draft, and just throw your curveball with their running back pick.
What did them taking an offensive tackle that profiles as a guard opposed to a center here, did that give you any kind of feeling one way or the other about Alex Mack, or is that still pretty TBD at this point?
It is, but I'm starting to lean more and more that he's not coming back. The thing is I have to tell you what's going through my mind during the draft because of the undrafted free agents that were brought in who are actually centers. And we'll talk about them. So at that point, I didn't really lean anywhere when it came to Alex Mack. I kind of already thought he was out the door anyway. And I never really thought that Burford was going to be somebody who could play center, right? For me, it's okay. I see the vision. I see what you're doing now at this point, but are you going to address it later on? So maybe you get a little bit nervous because you want to see them address it, but you know how they did later on down the line. So, we'll eventually get to those guys and talk about them.
Absolutely. Does this have an impact on Aaron Banks? Do you still feel like Aaron Banks is slotted in to just take over that maybe left guard? Maybe they kick Brunskill to center or keep him at right? Or do you feel like, and we're going to get some more of the offensive line picks, but it's kind of feel like open competition season on that interior offensive line?
Brad, I don't want to get you too excited, but man, when we get to camp, you're going to have to cover an entire O-line position battle. And
I'm so happy about it.
It is going to be glorious. We are really about to find out what Banks is about and what this is. And there's nothing wrong with some competition, especially if you find somebody who is going to be here for a long time at that value. So, yeah, it's going to be open. There's a lot of spots on this team that are going to have some very interesting position battles, man. And I think that, again, there's nothing wrong with that, and the 49ers have built very good depth that way. We're still not talking about Jake Brendel. We're still not talking about Colton McKivitz. This is a group that is going to have a long competition to figure out what is what and who's going to play where, and I know you're jacked for that. I personally won't be paying as much attention to it just because I'm not the O-line guru. You are. But you and your content during the training camp, to the moon. I'm
going to be like a kid in the candy store. I'm just watching O-line. We were like that at training camp last year. It's like, you guys watch the secondary. Tell me how they are. Like I watched maybe a handful of snaps of Ambry Thomas. I just listened to you and your scouting reports on Ambry Thomas. And I was like, yeah, okay, I believe you. Because then I would watch. I was like, yeah, that matches exactly with what Jason was telling me. So I'm just going to go right back to the offensive line. I'm watching Aaron Banks. I'm watching Jalen Moore. I'm watching Brunskill. I'm watching all these guys. I'm just going to listen to Jason about the
Brad. The worst part is I know the things that I said, and I wasn't very nice to Ambry. And you were just like, "Damn, that bad, huh?" And I was just like, "It's not." I was like, "It's not that
you
bad."
Wrong either. So
not at that time.
A feather in the scouting camp. No, we saw he needed time. Like, he needed time. He wasn't ready first game in, second game in. It took him time, and he still has time. And I think the 49ers indicated that as much by getting Charvarius Ward. And potentially, I don't know, does this have an impact with the 49ers taking Samuel Womack, cornerback out of Toledo, in the 5th round? Is he an outside corner? Is he an inside corner? More of a slot nickel? Does that have an impact on Ambry Thomas? I don't know. You tell me. You're the secondary guy.
I don't really think so. I think that he's a K1 clone in terms of all his measurables. He's just faster. I mean, it literally, this team, when you look at certain things, they literally replace guys with the same traits of the guys that they're trying to replace, right? You move away from Buckner. Okay, cool. We gotta get somebody right there, and it's Kinlaw. And there's other examples of just, hey, this guy profiles just like this guy. He looks just like K1. 4.39 40 speed. He could be a better tackler, which is something that I need him to work on, especially because that's the biggest part of the game at nickel that you need to work on. He's good at run support.
Off-ball linebacker in a sense.
Yeah, right. Like exactly. And you have to still cover. So that's the thing is the 4.39 speed is good. He's good at run support. I just need him to clean up the tackling because that's going to be important. The only thing is they're kind of betting on measurables at this point with a lot of these athletes. That's the only philosophy change that I've seen with the 49ers is Womack is probably going to be on special teams to start, right? Because Jason Verrett's back. And let's just say all things go back to normal, right? And Jason Verrett is that guy from 2020. Now you got Ward on the other side. Emmanuel Mosley, who is the best corner on this team, kick inside. So Womack doesn't need to necessarily be pressed into duty. And you still have Ambry Thomas, and you still have to figure out what you have with Lenore as well, too. So Womack won't be pressed into duty, but he fits just like K1. And I want to go on record right now on May 4th and saying that right now, this cornerback room that they have is the deepest since Shanahan and Lynch have been here. Hands down, the deepest. I mean, when you're talking about Emmanuel Mosley being the best corner on the team last year and kicking him inside now possibly, I think it's a super win. It all depends, as we know, on Jason Verrett's health. And can he be that guy again in 2020? So, yes, I very much like this pick. But, again, this feels like replace him with a similar guy, but also it's down the line and it won't be something that is going to be pressed into duty right now unless Samuel Womack shows up to camp and he just dominates everybody.
So it does feel like, too, they also took Deommodore Lenoir with the 5th round pick, who, again, is, profiles best to being a nickel corner. It does feel like it's going to be an open competition between those two who solidifies that kind of nickel corner role. But also, as you talked about, they might not even see the field, especially if you want to get your 3 best cornerbacks on the field, which would be a healthy Verrett, Charvarius Ward, and Emmanuel Mosley. So it's going to be interesting to see. Really quickly, what are your thoughts on the return of FIVA, Jason Verrett?
I love it, man. I mean, you know how much he costs on the cap?
This is hilarious. Jason on Ponte right now. You're right.
You know how much he costs? 0 on the cap. He's making less than $1 million this year. I saw some people complain about, well, you got to get these young guys reps. No. Earn your reps, earn them, and you always bring in depth, especially when you look at what Verrett did. It only strengthens the room. And look, if God forbid something goes wrong with Jason Verrett and he's not ready to go or they realize something, then you move on from him with no loss really at all.
Money at that point.
And that's it. It is all house money at this point. If you're talking about Jason Verrett being anywhere near 2020 Jason Verrett with Charvarius Ward and with Emmanuel Mosley, now is the first time the 49ers have had a secondary overall. Who cares who's going to play in that other spot across from Jimmy Ward? Overall, you would be able to couple that pass rush with coverage, and now you might be talking about one of the best defenses this team has fielded since 2019. And that's saying a lot. That is saying a lot. So
that defense was really good just based on their front 4 alone.
Mm-hmm.
They created so much, or they relieved so much pressure on the back end of the defense because you also had Fred Warner, who emerged as an elite middle linebacker, but you had Defoe, you had Eric, you had D Ford, you had Bosa, and those guys were just unstoppable. So it's feeling pretty good to be
Hey,
a fan of
look at
defense
us.
on the 49ers.
Look at us being optimistic about this team, and it's not all doom and gloom, man. Hey, look at us, man.
He's
Imagine
taking
that.
a turn.
Imagine being able to speak nicely about this team and not just crying about everything all the time, which is something that I'm seeing way too much, and it's just so annoying at this point. Like it's
Well,
gotten
we
me
know
so
that's some
far.
people's brand. It's just to cry about
Yes,
things. So
100%. Everything's a problem. Everything's bad.
Yeah.
You didn't draft the guy that I liked in my mock draft, so you suck, and I hate it. It's just look. Can we objectively break down what these guys are, and then 2 years down the line figure out who was right and who was wrong? Goodness gracious, man.
I don't actually mind this too much. What are your thoughts? Corey says TDP reminds me of DeMarco Murray.
I like it. DeMarco was a bruiser, man. I mean, Dallas just
Yeah.
ran him into the ground, but I think that there's a lot of similarities. Again, he's faster than people are giving him credit for. I think that when he hits his top speed, he's gone. Like he's a ghost. And again, when you're physical like he is, and you talk the pass pro thing, again, people were just upset because they passed on whoever they wanted in the draft. But if we talking a year down the line while you're saving Deebo Samuel and he's closing out games and getting tough yards at the end of the game, I don't think you guys are going to be that upset. So I love it in tandem with Elijah Mitchell, who definitely needs someone else to take that off of his plate as well, too, because of all the injuries that he sustained last year.
Does Deebo have the same type of production next year?
Not from the running back position. No, I don't think so. I think that it's hard. Law of averages dictate that it is almost impossible to duplicate what you did last year, especially when you consider what he was on pace for. Because he was on pace for, and who his quarterback was, 100%. And Brandon Aiyuk is going to start to go up because who's working out together? So, and it's not an indictment on Deebo. Deebo's going to take a step back numbers-wise, but as we all know, numbers don't tell the story. Pop on the tape. What's the impact? And when you need a big play, Deebo is still going to be that guy. Yes. And they'll still have those plays designed just for him, those tunnel screens, things like that. But
I'm excited to see Deebo evolve and kind of knock that like he's not a receiver tag that he somehow earned just by kicking him in and using him as a running back. So I don't think the usage is going to be to what it was because I think it's going to be completely different. I don't think they're going to use him in the same role, whether he wants to play wide back or not. Now they could still use that and use that, from a scheme standpoint, from a basically pre-snap alignment standpoint, but they still don't have to use him like they did, or at least with the regularity or necessity that they did last year, right? So that could impact his overall production.
And in a pinch, again, when you need a big play and Deebo looks at Kyle and says, let's put it in the box, hey, whatever. You've got to get the ball in the hands of your best players, but it doesn't necessarily have to be leaning on him because you don't have other options. And I think that's where the disconnect comes with people and talking about lightening his load.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the 49ers 6th-round pick. They took Nick Zakelj, O-line out of Fordham at pick 187. What'd you think about that?
Okay. This one's a little bit redundant with Burford, but I think it again speaks to the regime and the versatility because, again, here we are talking about a guy who can play multiple positions, everything but center, but he kind of profiles more as a tackle for me, in my opinion. And I know the concerns. He went to Fordham. Stop disrespecting New York, by the way. He went to Fordham. You don't like that.
That's where Fordham was.
Yeah. But I would implore people to pop on the tape against Nebraska. He was whipping ass. And that's not a small school. So, look, 6'6", 316. Again, more versatility. But I see him more as a tackle than anything. And again, begs the question, who is the replacement for who at this point? Is Burford here for Trent? Is Nick here for Trent? Are they here for McGlinchey? Like this is the reason that you stockpile these picks because Trent's going to be here for a while. We know that as long as Trent is healthy, he's going to be the best in the world, and you're not replacing him anytime soon. But it's very good to have those things. Trent does miss games, unfortunately, And you want to be able to have guys that you can rely on and not miss a beat on, even though you will be missing a beat. That's why they're backups, and that's why there is nobody better than Trent. But again, for me, I think Burford profiles more like a guard at this level, and I think Nick profiles more like a tackle at this level. Who's going to be replacing who is going to be the question going forward, and I think that's something that we'll figure out in a year or two. But again, stockpile the cupboard, continue to have guys that you can move around in a pinch. And if the guy plays very well, then you've got to give him time. But I don't really necessarily have a problem with it. Just feels a little redundant in terms of Burford because of the versatility that they have.
This one shocked me because at first, when they took him, I had no idea who he was. I was like, who the hell is this guy? Fordham? Like a 6th round again, it's it's kind of you're taking a shot in the dark, not in the dark, but like you're taking a chance on guys.
Your expectations change. That's another thing that I want to tell people is like when you take a 6th rounder, if he doesn't perform like a first rounder, don't get mad. That's why.
Or when a 6th rounder performs like a 2nd rounder, like Elijah Mitchell, give him his props, give him his flowers, and also give some props to the developmental staff as well because hey, that's pretty good. It's good production. But when I started to dive into it, I know you said you see him profile as an offensive tackle. I see center ability with Zakelj. Like when I look at Zakelj, I see, you guys know me, I'm a Brunskill, basically stan at this point. I see Brunskill 2.0. I see a guy who's ultra versatile, like you talked about. The feet, the hips, the leverage, and how he plays. He doesn't play like he's 6'6". He does not play like he's 350 pounds. And so, although I don't see, an ultra sharp kick step, I do see a guy who can be pretty. You could kick him inside to guard, potentially center. And again, we're talking about, are they going to put Brunskill at center? What are they going to do in that regard? I really look at this guy, and I know they like Brunskill inside that building. They're going to have a lot different opinion as most fans, but Brunskill does a lot of things really well as a puller, getting to second level in the run game. He's really good at passing off stunts. Now, he might struggle in one-on-one pass protection when you're throwing a 340-pound defensive tackle on him, and he weighs, barely 300 pounds. He's going to have a little bit problem there. But I see Zakelj as a guy who's going to be pretty solid in regards to what they can do with him. They can put him – they could play him at tackle. They could play him at guard. And I see this scenario where they actually put him at center and they develop, again, you get that size, 6'6", 315 pounds. He has the movement ability to be able to play on that interior, get out in space, get to the second level. I see a guy who could potentially be a puller as well. So I came away pretty excited about this pick. I went into it like, who the hell is this? I came out like, okay. And again, we know Daniel Brunskill is on the last year of his deal. So this could be kind of, when we saw them take Aaron Banks after Laken Tomlinson, it kind of feels like that same kind of vibe. So I actually came away liking the pick. Not pretty surprised with it, actually.
Absolutely. And the 49ers always make moves for down the line as well, too. Here's something I'll throw out at everybody. And I think it's something that many people have discussed. And we'll talk about the undrafted free agents because I think that's where it starts, I think, right now with the center position, because I don't suspect that Alex Mack is back. Like, Alex Mack is off his honeymoon, but anybody who's been married or is married realizes that the honeymoon phase doesn't just stop on vacation. That first year is beautiful. Everything's great. Everything's awesome. Right? So maybe Alex Mack is sitting at home right now like, man, you know what? I don't need football anymore. I'm enjoying my time with my wife. We maybe want to start a family. What about J.C. Tretter? And what about, hey, you've got guys that you can develop, right? And J.C. Tretter could step right in right now and be that veteran presence that you need, and you don't necessarily have to move Brunskill around. He can take all the reps at one spot. But J.C. Tretter isn't a long-term fix. And now what happens after that? Now you've got guys that you can eventually look at and either put in a competition or vet out yourself and realize, okay, this is our long-term, our long-term player. This is the guy that we need as the backup. This is, and that's the type of stuff that the 49ers are doing. They're planning ahead, planning for the future. I know that people don't like the whole drafting someone for down the line, but when you're talking about the 6th round, you're talking about undrafted free agents. That's exactly what they are. You necessarily don't want those guys to step right in and start unless you've completely found the diamond in the rough and you're just like, hey, we beat everybody to the punch on this one. But it's not a necessarily It's not something that's typical in that way. So does JC Tretter become a target because JC Tretter is not going to be playing for anybody who doesn't have a chance to compete or isn't in a spot where they have a winning culture? And I think that's the part that I find a little bit more interesting. I know many people have brought that up before, but that kind of seems like a fallback option where JC Tretter's kind of sitting, waiting by the phone. And who knows? Maybe Alex Mack has let them know and they're not saying anything to anybody right now. And they're just saying, yeah, it's up in the air, it's up in the air, it's up in the air to kind of throw people off. But that's not a bad way of looking at it.
I think JC Tretter would be a phenomenal fit. I mean, it feels pretty similar from going from Alex Mack to JC Tretter. It doesn't feel like there'd be much of a fall off. It feels like you could expect a similar level of production going from Mack to Tretter, which, if you're asked 49er fans, that's great because, again, look at 2020 without Alex Mack. It's putrid. So you want to be able to get a good center in there to kind of be the guy, the glue guy for your offensive line. But we'll see who that is, whether it's one of these rookies, whether it's Brunskill, whether it is JC Tretter, and they're just kind of waiting because they're a little bit tied up with funds right now. So maybe JC Tretter is waiting. I don't we'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, he's a veteran. He can wait until training camp, right? He doesn't have to come in necessarily if he doesn't want to. But that Kyle Shanahan playbook is a hard one. So might want to get in on that sooner rather than later. Let's see. Let's move on to the other two 6th-round picks that the 49ers had. At 220, they took Kalia Davis, defensive tackle out of UCF. What was your overall thought process once you've been able to kind of dive into that pick a little bit more? And how do you kind of see them using him? Because we talked about it earlier. 49ers defensive line is stacked with depth, and they go back to the well in the 6th round to get Davis out of UCF. What are your thoughts on that?
I think he's probably more of a nose and probably just like DJ Jones at this point. And I mean that in the most humble, respectful way. I am not telling you that he is about to step in and be the best at run blocking win rate. I'm not talking.
Who does he remind you again? One more time,
just DJ Jones.
For King Geo in the chat.
DJ Jones.
Thank you. All right.
Yes.
Keep going. Sorry.
So he profiles like a run stuffer, but when I got a chance to watch him, he shows some promise as a pass rusher as well, too. 5 sacks this past year. And if he can develop that a little bit more, then he can become another body, and you can have Kinlaw and him in a rotation, and you can have – we know Kinlaw can stop the run. We know that. We're just waiting for that pass rush to explode from him, right? We're just waiting for all of that. But I think that Davis profiles like a run stuffer right off the bat, but I think people are sleeping on his pass rush. I mean, the 5 sacks is not a great number, but when you're talking about a nose and you're talking about all those other single matchups that he could get, he could possibly be in a package where Nick Bosa's on one side and maybe Ebukam or maybe Armstead's outside in this one. He's getting good looks. If he can develop that, the 49ers continue to do what they do and build with Chris Kosurik. I think that this is actually a very solid pick. Now, obviously, is coming off the torn ACL. Felt like Trent Baalke's ghost jumped in the room when he heard torn ACL and was like, draft him, do it now. And then they were just like, I think we should draft Kalia Davis. And they were like, who? And they just hit the button. No, I'm just kidding. But and he opted out during the COVID year as well too. Again, 6th-round pick. So if he pans out fine, you don't really feel too bad about it. But I like it. I like the fit, and I can see the vision. Again, here we go. Profile with K'Wan Williams and Womack, DJ Jones now, Kalia Davis. This team continues to say, we like the skill set and these traits and their build. We're going to continue to get guys that fit that mold, and Kalia Davis falls right in line with that.
Zakelj, Brunskill. Hey, we're starting to connect the dots here a little bit, and I agree 100%. When I turned on the Davis tape, that was the first thing I saw. Again, squatty body, short area quickness. You see the burst. You see the ability to shuck these offensive linemen. What did DJ Jones do? Exactly that. First step quickness, the strength, look into the backfield, get his guy off him, and he was on to the next. So that's exactly what Davis looks like. And again, it does feel like he could be a potential PUP candidate, start the year kind of stashed, where he could turn into a guy and then develops into the future doesn't have to be a force right now. So, going to be very interesting to see how he ultimately develops again coming off the ACL in October. But he does seem like a pretty solid nose tackle, kind of one tech kind of guy. But the 49ers had back to back picks in the 6th round. They came back and they took another cornerback in Tariq Castro-Fields. Tell me about him and where you see him slotting in at. Where are they going to put him?
Did the 49ers not draft a safety? Or did they? Or did they? 4.3840, right? He plays very fast. Good in run support. Again, needs to improve his tackling. But he probably fits better as a safety at this point. Now, the 49ers have options at safety. Odom, Hufanga. 6 rounders sometimes don't make the team. We saw, Jawan Jennings took a little while to cap. Say, here we go. Not everybody nature knows. Maybe they did. Maybe they did take themselves a safety. He's not as athletic with change of direction. I'd say that's the only thing that I would have an issue with. That's it at this point.
He's kind of rigid, right?
Yeah, he's fast, but when he has to swing his hips and turn, that's the part that I get a little nervous about,
kind
right?
of boxy looking, little robotronic.
Right. But I love that. But again, special teams, I think he starts as a gunner right away. And this is not a bad pick in terms of what you can transition him to. I think he profiles much more as a safety than he does a corner. And that speed, that 4.38 speed is very good, and it shows a shift again. The 49ers address special teams all offseason, and they're getting guys who can play in special teams this offseason in the draft as well, while prioritizing athletes. I think that they're tired of having guys who can't get down the field as gunners and tackle, who are allowing things to get by them, and they are addressing it in that way. Does he make the 53? I am not certain, but that is my first guess on Tariq Castro-Fields. And again, another hyphenated last name. Start to put it together, man. You start to see the vision. It starts to work out more and more, and then you push the draft grade up, and you see the brain getting bigger because of what they've been able to do.
It's all about the hyphenated last name. That's going to be the key for next year's draft. Just lock it up and remember, and you're going to have a good chance of maybe hitting on one of these prospects just with the hyphenated last name alone. But I agree with you. I would say that was one of the first things that I saw with him. Doesn't look like a naturally fluid cornerback, even though he's a good athlete. Does look a little bit rigid, where you kind of be like, well, maybe if he kept everything in front of him and then was crashing downhill using that speed, I agree. I think that was one of the first things that I saw on tape. He does look like a safety, and he kind of has that frame too. He could play, but he could play multiple different roles. And with D'Amico Ryans, I feel pretty confident that he's going to find the right role for him, whether that's safety, corner, wherever. But let's not forget the San Francisco 49ers had the Mr. Irrelevant pick.
I hate that name.
With that selection, they went with Brock Purdy, quarterback, Iowa State. What did you think about the pick? Did them going quarterback mean anything to you?
Let me set the scene, Brad. I leave the media room because it's supposed to be my last day in Vegas, and I want to enjoy myself a little bit. And it's the last pick, so it's like, okay, usually these guys don't make the team, but I'm huddled around some 49ers fans looking at a screen, watching. The pick comes in, Brock Purdy. Everyone jumps up and down and starts hugging each other, saying Super Bowl, Super Bowl, Super Bowl. I'm just joking. That's not what happened at all.
I was about to say, who are you with?
No, look, I'll be honest. Last year, all we did was look at quarterbacks because of where the 49ers were. I didn't look at any quarterbacks, and I was not particularly big on this. By the way, Malik Willis, go kick everybody's ass out there, man. That is super disrespectful of this entire league, man. Like, to let him fall that far.
And his running mate on the Titans threw a little disrespect his way.
You think it was disrespectful?
I mean, I think it's truthful, But I think it's one of those you have to play the political role where you know how you say something is going to be perceived by the masses, so you just don't say it. And I think that's why Jimmy Garoppolo is considered a really good mentor to Trey Lance. He doesn't say those things. Again, I don't think it's wrong. He doesn't have to mentor him. He's worried about winning football games, not mentoring his replacement. It's just you say it, and then we know how it rolls. People just, oh, terrible, terrible person. You got players quote tweet. It's just you just don't.
I
Say
agree
it.
with that. I agree with that. He shouldn't have had to say it. And again, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Guys can be like, yeah, I'm gonna mentor him. I love him. And then they get behind closed doors and they're like, get the hell out of my face, Rook. Like, get out, like, I don't want to talk to you, right? Like, my thing is this. What I took away from that entire press conference, because everybody's going to take that quote and run. I implore you guys to watch that entire Ryan Tannehill press conference. He was forthcoming and very honest about things that quarterbacks never say. The biggest thing that I took away was not that quote about him mentoring people, because who knows what the hell goes beyond closed doors. Guys smile in your face and then they get back in the locker room and they're like, get lost. I don't have to tell you anything. But because he said it out there, you believe is a mentor. We don't know what goes on behind closed doors. The biggest thing that I took away from Ryan Tannehill speaking was how honest he was about how poorly he played in that Bengals game and how long it took him to get over it, and how he had to talk to a therapist to get it out of his head, and that he couldn't sleep at night. That is stuff that guys do never talk about. You know what guys say when they get to the podium? Cliches. You want me to tell you about? Here, I'm a quarterback who had a rough game. Ready? Yeah, it's tough. You never want to let your team down, but you turn the page and you're ready to go, and you know that you're there to battle with your guys, and they have your back, and it's a good support system, and we feel really good about the team that we have back there, and we're ready to compete. Bullshit. That guy is still going. Yeah, exactly. That guy is going through it in his head. So for me, he just was so forthcoming with everything else that came out as well. Now, I agree with you 100%, Brad. You can't say that out loud. You can't. But I would ask anyone who has any job, hey, we're going to have this guy who's replacing you. We need you to train him. You know what I tell that guy? Get lost. Fend for yourself, dude, because now I've got to find another job. I get it. You're the quarterback. You're the leader. You need to do more, blah, 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 locker room stuff. You're forgetting the human element, guys. I don't necessarily have a problem with his actions if that's what's going to happen. Just the problem that he shouldn't have said it that way. But when you listen to that interview, he was candid and honest. And I thought that was refreshing, because quarterbacks usually BS flows from their mouth after they have bad games. Yeah, it's just another game. You never really think about it and you don't bother. Yeah, sure, it bothers you for a little bit, but you turn the page. No, that's not what's going on. And guys lie all the time. So for me, I just want Malik to less about kicking Ryan Tannehill's ass, more about kicking the ass of guys that passed on him. Guys moved up and drafted guys that I'm just like, what on earth is happening with Malik right now at this point? I mean, Ritter over Malik, that's disgusting. Howell and like all these guys going ahead of him, it was gross. It was so bad to hear. And that's what I talked to Malik about. If you guys want to check my page, I actually put it up, the interview. I alluded to, well, what happens when you hear all the negatives and how does that fuel you? And Malik said, man, you can't really listen to that because half the time those guys are wrong. So I hope he keeps that attitude. I am personally rooting for that kid because that should never happen. Anyway, completely off of topic at this point. Brock Purdy.
I would like to add just really quick. We don't have to get into depth. I like how Tannehill also spoke about the AJ trade, and just like he was like, I was sick. I was absolutely sick. I couldn't sleep. I thought it was a bad dream. Not only that, they trade up to draft the quarterback. I would be sick too if I was a quarterback. So again, I get what he said. It's just you got to play that political role. Again, that could be the truth, and the truth can carry weight, and it can mean like I believe what he says. It's not necessary. Like Malik can come in and just watch what Tannehill does, and that can be enough mentorship.
That's what he said.
Watch how he goes about his day by day. Pay attention to him. It's more on Malik than anything that Tannehill's going to do. I mean, if he has questions about the playbook, yeah, you answer the questions about the playbook. But it's not like you guys are having study sessions after every single practice or anything like that. It's just obviously blown into a much bigger thing than it really should have been. But I got Malik Willis today. I think it was at 205 in a rookie dynasty
Really?
draft. I feel pretty good about it.
I would too. I would absolutely. I mean, when you couple that rushing floor with the cannon that the kid has, man, and then when you think about this, they're eventually going to unleash Malik with Derrick Henry and how many RPOs and things like that and how much running room he's going to have. And then they literally drafted a guy that Traylon Burks was comp to A.J. Brown. That's it. It's like, again, teams are just like, hey, we're going to trade A.J. Brown. Let's try to get A.J. Brown. And who knows if that works out. But, yeah, I'm rooting for that kid, man. He's such a nice guy. We saw in Indy. And this was not when the cameras were on because, again, guys say things, and this is what I'm talking about when I was talking about quarterbacks. This man was giving a homeless person in Indianapolis clothes out of his bag. This is a very, very solid young man who deserved more than all of that. And I think that I'm personally rooting for Malik Willis to kick ass in this league, man, because he didn't deserve any of that.
So
anyway, Brock Purdy.
Is it someone asked in the chat? Is it a throwaway pick? Is there a path forward? What do you think?
I mean, I think I know for sure that we're going to have 2 quarterbacks on this roster going into training camp, possibly a third. You know who that third is. Sudfeld's got guaranteed money. He's not going anywhere. And they love him. And also, I know that a lot of people joke. Stop disrespecting Nate Sudfeld. Sudfeld darts. Wake up, honey. Like, some of the best throws we saw at training camp, that includes Trey and Jimmy. We're from Nate Sudfeld.
My favorite saying from training camp, by the way. Just wake up on Sudfeld darts.
And you think that we're joking about it. Sure, we're joking a little bit about it. But in one-on-ones, some of the most impressive throws were from Nate Sudfeld. And he's got a little bit of wheels. And they like him being able to run the offense. Okay. So
people thought Josh Rosen was running away with that QB3 spot. We're like,
he got Josh Rosen up out of here fast. And fast, quick in a hurry.
Just cut him. They're like, we're done with you. Goodbye.
Yeah. So Sudfeld is going to be there. Trey's going to be there. The other guy, he might be there. I don't know, Brad. I think that for me, them taking a quarterback there kind of signifies that they don't believe that someone else is going to be here. You cannot carry 4 guys. And that's kind of where we're going. You can carry 3. You carry 2 on game day, 1 on the practice squad.
Yep.
And Sudfeld's not going anywhere. Because if you do cut him now,
was that third. He was the practice squad guy.
Right. So now I just
got a little bump.
For me, again, I'm gonna read into it so it can fit what I want it to fit and my narrative, and that is that they're believing that there's a certain person that will not be on this roster going into training camp.
What do we want to talk about that? You say yes or no?
No, not yet.
Okay, perfect. On to the next. I like Brock Purdy. I think, again, I've talked about this story before. I was scouting Chase Allen, their tight end, and I came away like, I'm actually kind of impressed with Brock Purdy and the way he slings it, the way he moves around. He can get out of the pocket. He's not going to be an ultra athletic kind of guy. He's going to be one of these guys that if you need a spot start, maybe can get the job done. Again, Mr. Nick Mullins has done it before. He kind of profiles into that type of quarterback, but they need camp arms. They need guys who are going to be available. So best case scenario, he's third string, which is practice squad, and we'll see. But let's talk about, I asked Jordan this question. I'll ask you the same question. Not including the undrafted free agents, just the draft haul. What would you grade that? If you had draft grades are popular and all that kind of stuff. If you just had to throw a grade on it, what would you throw just the draft itself? What would you give it?
I've got a B, but when you start to talk about those undrafted free agents, that grade rises. And that has to be part of the haul, I think. But if you're talking about draft picks, I've got it at a B.
Okay, perfect. Now let's talk about the undrafted free agent class. Obviously, a lot of us were very excited about some of these picks. But I want to see what were some of your favorite picks that the 49ers were able to get onto the roster through undrafted free agency.
This is for you, Brad. 2 offensive linemen. Jason Poe, Donovan West, who many people had mocked very high, and the 49ers were able to get. I also want to point out something that I feel maybe some people are talking about, but they're kind of missing about Donovan West's contract. Donovan West is going to make the 53.
Yes.
$10K up front and $100,000 guaranteed. He's going to make this roster. And if you potentially have Alex Mack's replacement as an undrafted free agent, that flexibility with these contracts going forward, man. I mean, you don't have to give him a certain amount of money because he wasn't drafted in a certain round, anything like that. If you want to pay him because of what you're getting, that's completely different. Mm-hmm. But we kind of know the 49ers track record in terms of UDFAs and what they've been able to get. I mean, look at Emmanuel Mosley. Look at Aziz. I mean, this is what we're talking about with this team. Everybody always wants to talk about draft picks and who they miss on. But the same people don't want to give credit to the 49ers for who they have gained in undrafted free agent signings. And Jason Poe is the ultimate chess piece. Line him up at fullback, line him up at tight end, throw him some passes, let him run quarterback. Let's run Wildcat. Let's get crazy. Let's run Wildcat with Jason Poe. He's that athletic. But Donovan West, man, that really, really, really was the one that I was like, okay, now these guys are bumping their draft grade up from B to A-. Yes. And Donovan West is gonna make this 53. Put it on wax.
I'm so happy. I was bummed, obviously, to see him go undrafted. Again, I would have taken him at 105. I would have taken him at 93, and I would have been ecstatic. The fact that they were able to get him as a priority undrafted free agent, essentially, and like you said, that's how these guys recruit. They recruit with the money. If you can give guaranteed cash to these undrafted free agents, that's going to be a good indication to them that they have a shot to actually make the roster. So it would entice them more to sign somewhere where they can actually stick around and not just show up. So as to your point exactly, I'm thrilled that I don't know why he went undrafted. That's going to be a question for another day, because even guys that like we respect, Brandon Thorne, who does this is all he does is offensive line evaluation for the draft. He had a 4th round grade on him. So he's surprised. He's shocked. Everyone's surprised. Like, how did this guy go undrafted? Well, we'll find that out sooner rather than later. But the upside with that pick is huge. To be able to get a guy that you're taking into training camp or mini camp or OTAs as an undrafted free agent, and we're already talking about him being a potential roster lock for a 53-man roster, which is not a lot of spots. Like a lot of good players get cut because it's only 53 men that are allotted to the active roster. So if we're already talking about this guy as a potential shot at making it, I mean, again, it just points to the value that they got with him as an undrafted free agent. The talent's there. A little bit undersized, but other than that, not too bad. Jason Poe, too. I was telling Jordan about this yesterday. I wish I watched him before the draft, because when you put on that damn tape, this dude is a little lightning rod, like mixed together with the cannonball. Like he's just like that guy from Hook, when he like rolls his legs up and he just goes rolling down the thing and just knocking everyone out.
Brad,
that's like Jason Poe is, man.
You're dating yourself. For the younger crowd that is watching, Hook was a movie that stars Dustin Hoffman.
Movie. If you haven't watched, you better go watch it right now.
That stars Dustin Hoffman as Captain Hook and Robin Williams as Peter Pan. Rest in peace. But that was an electric reference. But for the younger generation, Hook is a movie it came out in 1991.
Dang, it came out in 91?
Yeah,
I didn't even know it was that old. But it's a classic. But
I'm gonna double check that.
That's what I think of with Jason Poe, right? Like, you get this guy out in space. You get this guy that a little bit ahead of steam. Again, his best trait to me is a puller.
Boom.
So
91.
Good pull. Look at that knowledge, bro. That's insane.
This brain is only filled with useless knowledge. I mean, like if I could make it on Jeopardy, then I might be able to be something in my life. But I don't know, man. It's looking less and less likely.
That's crazy that you just were able. 1991 right off the bat. You named the actors in it. Oh, that's legit. But it made the point even better. But that's kind of what I see, right? I see a guy who, and they've talked about him being a fullback. He posted those clips of him being a fullback. I had this like galaxy brain idea. Connor Hayward, who got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers,
Pretty cool
he's
to play
that
his brother.
6'1" kind of tweener. Like, what is he? Is he a tight end? Is he a running back? Is he a returner? Is he a slot? Like, what the hell is he? But he was more kind of a specialist role. Well, you get a tweener that's like kind of an offensive lineman, kind of a fullback. Like, it's going to be interesting to see if he has a role or if he becomes a practice squad stash. But he's fun to watch on tape.
100%. And yeah, your mind starts to drift to formations, what you can do. I mean, there was a time where Trent Williams was in motion. And what do you do with somebody like Jason Poe, especially on the goal line, where you kind of put him in motion and he just becomes an extra blocker, or maybe you want to leak him out so he can make a catch. Like, your mind starts to go wild with what you can do, because that athleticism is rare, and you're not just going to find that on trees. And again, I'll say it again, the 49ers are betting on many traits, and they want athletic guys. And this is the first draft that I could say they're going straight measurables on top of what they like in the players.
Absolutely. The 49ers also got Leon O'Neal, who has been a fan favorite of the 49ers. What were your thoughts of them being able to get him onto the roster?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, he'll be in there for more safety depth. I think that his 40 time kind of killed him in terms of his draft stock. And I think what 49er fans fell in love with was how infectious his personality is. For anybody who hasn't watched, he did a podcast with Javi Vega on the 4th and Goal podcast. I implore you guys to watch that. His energy is through the roof. He's a really nice guy, really easy guy to root for. Concerns in terms of him is sometimes bad angles on tackles, things like that. And you need to be a short tackler if you're going to be playing safety for this team. So it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle for him to get on this roster somehow. Maybe they have him on the practice squad for a while, but when you think about Tarvarius Moore, Odom, Hufanga, what I think about Tariq Castro as well too.
Dante Johnson, a little bit of a
Dante
tweener.
Johnson's not going anywhere.
No.
Get used to it.
Forever Niner.
Get used to it. Forever Niner. And stop slandering Dante Johnson. Like, I'm tired of it. But yeah, he's going to have a little bit of an uphill battle to make this roster. But if he balls out, then he's going to earn his spot. So again, nothing wrong with competition. And if it doesn't fall that way, someone else will probably take a chance on him. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out reasons why he was undrafted. And I think it has to do with the 40 speed. And sometimes on tape, he's out of position in terms of his angles on tackling.
So when you look at guys like DFF, Azeez Al-Shaair, I believe they're both converted safeties, both undrafted, maybe with the same similar knocks. He's when you look at Leon O'Neal, he's 6'1", 210. You add maybe 20 pounds onto him, maybe that speed, and you shift him into linebacker doesn't become as glaring of an issue. And he actually becomes, somewhat fast for a linebacker in some cases. But do you think that could be a potential? He might be. Maybe he's a DeMeco Ryans pick. Maybe DeMeco's like, you know what? I see. I think DeMeco, and I credit DeMeco with the development of Fred, Azeez, Greenlaw, all these guys. Maybe that's another guy that DeMeco gets some usage out of.
Right, and Marcel Harris too. I mean, I know he's not here anymore, but like a similar situation as well too. So, will Hufanga move down and be a linebacker? Will that open up a spot up top? We know, again, versatility and positionless football, it is not just on offense. It is everywhere on this team, and they're always looking for traits that they can use to move guys around. So that's a very good point. It could be very well that, but he definitely needs to add on weight if he wants to play linebacker.
Definitely. So again, we asked the specific grade of just the draft. What would you grade just the undrafted free agents? Like just them?
Oh man, it's an A. I mean, again, a 4th round grade on a guy that, Brandon Thorne is the authority on offensive line. I mean, when you look at him, when you look at the athleticism of Jason Poe, what you can possibly do with Leon O'Neal and move him around. There are other guys on here as well.
Demo out of North Carolina, right. Another kind of undersized, tweener linebacker safety kind of guy.
Yeah. So if you do the average between an A and a B, you'll find yourself at a B plus, A minus around there, and that's pretty good. So yeah, So I love the undrafted free agent picks, man, especially when so many people had Donovan West and Leon O'Neal mocked. And the other kid, what's his name? Marquise Grant, or is it, or what's his name? Goodness gracious, I'm drawing a blank.
Tyseer Mack, maybe.
Yeah, I know. Oh, goodness gracious. He had Roscoe make an edit for him because he was brought on. I forgot, man.
Quantrez Knight.
Quantrez Knight. That's why. I don't know why I got his name wrong.
Cornerback
Yeah,
out of
him too.
UCLA.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed this class, and I think the 49ers, the more that the draft went along, and then when you couple that with the undrafted free agents, I really enjoyed this draft. For as many people that had knocks on it, I'm not necessarily sure what you wanted them to do. I understand that they didn't draft your players, and you need to get over it, Jason. Like I need to tell myself that, especially about past drafts. But at the same time, if this all works out in a year or two, we're going to look back and say, man, how many impact players did they actually draft in this draft? And I think that's more important than where they were drafted or who they passed on.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's going to be a fun class to look back on, I think, because not only are we going to get some impact starters out of the guys that they drafted, but we'll also see some starters come out of this undrafted free agent class, whether it's with the 49ers, whether they land with someone else and develop elsewhere. But overall, right, it feels like a pretty solid haul of talent. And my biggest takeaway is depth. Like, I look at every position group, and I'm just like, I really don't see those concerns like we had last year, because remember, we were in training camp. We were looking at each other like, man, it's like day one. And the secondary depth is putrid. They're already trying to bring in veterans off the street.
Dante was starting with day one. He was starting opposite Jason
We're like,
Verrett.
what the hell's going on, bro? Like, we made it this far and we still don't have secondary depth. Like, what is happening? So that was one of my biggest takeaways, is not only is there depth, but there's competition, right? Like, we're going to see some surprises in training camp, I think, from the way, like, who actually starts, right?
Look at us, Brad, talking about actual football as opposed to
it's been a long offseason, Jason.
Right. Yeah. This has been the longest year. This month has been the longest year. This past one in April, man, especially with everything going on. But now we get to actually dig in the tape, talk about players, actual football. And before you know it, blink your eyes, it's going to be time for camp again. And, man, I'm so jacked to get out there again.
Mini camp 13th through the 15th. So we might be seeing some stuff from the 49ers here pretty soon. So that's kind of exciting.
Look at that. And as quickly as the season ended, the season's ramping right back up, and we're getting right back in the saddle. But it's very good to be talking about players instead of, things else. Right. Hypotheticals or things that are going on that we're trying to put pieces together on now. Now we can just literally focus on players. And I think that is good for 49ers fans and good for the content, because we get to talk about things that are actually happening and things that are going to happen in terms of who's going to be fighting for roster spots.
It's just good for the mind, the heart, and the soul that we just get to talk about football again and evaluations and stuff like that. And we're going to evaluate.
I love covering the team.
We're going to talk about the other positions and the other situations, of course, as training camps continue, OTAs continue. The way we're going to start, obviously, we're going to start talking about what does that 53-man look like? Who are the potential projected starters? But obviously, we need to see some of these guys get on the field, because, like we know, some rise and some fall. And it's never a true science. So we're going to find out. Cap says amen to that. I agree. But Jason, this is a great recap episode. We were able to cover a ton of these prospects with the 49ers. So it's going to be, like we said, very interesting to see. And I'm sure you and I will be there at training camp to do more evaluation and see who's actually going to win these competitions. Tell the good people where to follow you, where to find more of your content, all that good stuff.
Yeah, thanks again, Brad. These are always my my favorite episodes this week. Sorry, Andrew. I'm just kidding.
Strike that from the record. Strike
straight. Yeah, edit it from the podcast, because there's so many people that are like, well, you said on the podcast, you probably edited it out. No. We don't do the editing thing or whatever. Yes, make sure you like this video, subscribe to both channels.
Yes.
Like on both channels as well, too. Join the Spicy Squad. Also, tomorrow on Sprint Right Option, we actually have Dr. Nirav Pandya He's going to be talking. Yes. So we're going to have him on.
Nice
We're going to ask him. We're going to ask him about Mike McGlinchey, Jason Verrett, Kalia Davis' injury, and also that guy that is on the roster as well still. So, tap in for that. It's going to be, again, we are at a point now where we don't have to focus on the things that we can't control or anything like that, or that are still like lingering in the background. Now we can get into actual things, and I think that's where we're going with the content. So, make sure you guys are tapped in. Follow me on Twitter at JasonAponde2103. I can't believe I nailed it in one shot like that. That's good practice. And Brad, missed you in Vegas, buddy. That's all we were saying the entire time was just like, man.
Do you have any behind the scenes stories where you can bring us into the mix of like what it's like covering the draft in Vegas as a credentialed media member?
I do. So we walk into the media room. I'm trying to set up because I want to do my stream. First of all, the Wi-Fi was boo-boo. And you know what? Yeah, McDonald's Wi-Fi was probably clearing this Wi-Fi that they were giving out in that media room at this point.
I found out last week that McDonald's Wi-Fi is pretty sharp. It was better than my Wi-Fi before. I was like, wait, I've been clouding McDonald's Wi-Fi. Mine's worse.
Everybody's making fun of McDonald's Wi-Fi, but the NFL was giving out boo-boo Wi-Fi at the hotel. So, I mean, I get set up, right? I'm sitting at the table looking around, and you see a bunch of familiar faces, guys that you respect very much within that have done content, things like that have contributed so much. And this young lady walks up, and she's unfortunately in crutches. She has a sprained ankle or something like that. And I see a young man carrying her stuff and helping her over. And I look up, it's Todd Gurley.
Oh,
and he's like right there. And I'm like, what's up, Todd? He's like, what's up, bro? I was like, what the hell was that? Like, where did that come from? And it's during the stream too, so you guys can check it out.
What's up, Todd?
Yeah, I was just like casual, like, what's up, Todd Gurley? And then being able to be there and you're shaking hands with people from all over the country, networking. We actually met somebody who represents Jeff Garcia. Oh. So we had the discussion about the comment, right? And I said, listen,
about Mina.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I said, listen, I'm not going to talk about, the women thing because I feel like everybody has, and that's obviously the big point. I was like, the part that really gets me upset about what Jeff said was that if you haven't played the position, you don't get to talk about it. Well, I was like, well, you see everybody in this room, none of us get to talk about it then. I was like, do you see how dumb that statement was? It's like, it doesn't matter, man or woman. None of us have played quarterback. So that means we can't give opinions. I was like, right. I was like, he messed up. And she was like, yeah, he did. But it was really good. But then
he said, yeah, he did.
Yeah, no, he did. He did. So then the best part was getting over to, earlier in the, when we did our stream on Wednesday, we had spoken with all the players. We had a chance to talk with Joe Klatt and Daniel Jeremiah. Charles Davis was very nice, man. He's the nicest guy we've ever met. We get into the room for the first round draft picks. I only get in at first to see Jermaine Johnson because I had spoken to him before. Right. And getting to ask him a question and getting to be in there and talk to Brees in the second round and things like that. Like, just an experience that when I was a kid, I had always thought of possibly doing, and then to like see it come to fruition just off of YouTube and just off of sending memes on Twitter and things like that. It is an experience that I will never, ever forget, man. And it's something that anybody who's out there and is looking at like, hey, I would love to do something like that. Promise you, it's much easier than you think. I mean, it's not easy, but it's not as hard as you believe it is if you're just committed and you stick to your guns, man. So that's really what I took away from the experience, and it's something I'll never ever forget.
That's dope, man. I think one of the favorite things that I saw from you was the Scott Hansen video.
That Scott Hansen went. That was the best part. But how could I forget? So, all right. Unfortunately, and we can get a little candid real quick. Fortunately, I'm walking out of a liquor store, and this man is just
shocker.
This man is casually walking by, and I'm like, Scott, can I run a video real quick? He's like, yeah, I'm just walking this way. Yo, I hit it, and I just said 7 hours, and he knew the vibe right away, and he went right in and said it, and that's what made it electric. We didn't rehearse it, we didn't talk about it. He just knew. Scott Hansen, nicest guy, hands down, coolest dude in the world, hardest working dude as well too. You guys realize that he does NFL Red Zone for 7 hours and does not use the bathroom? My goodness,
and he
man!
Doesn't stop talking. He doesn't
exactly,
pause really ever.
And you got to drink water. But yeah, you're right. The Sky Hansen thing, that was probably the time when I realized, all right, I'm done being professional and I can still get back to that fan in me that still has at heart, this game that I love so much and a guy who contributes so much to. Yeah, so
Of course, dude. It was super cool to see all you guys out there, you and Jordan living life, doing all that good stuff, man. It was phenomenal watching you guys work. And again, you guys work in the interviews. You guys clearly are super good at that. So phenomenal to see you guys out there working all that good stuff. But also, thanks to everyone who's been hopping in here. Again, smash these like buttons if you haven't already. Hit them on both channels, sub to both channels, do all that good stuff. As you guys know, it helps us all out big time. But Jason, thank you as always. Shout out to SDS.
one more
Shout
thing,
out to
Brad.
Spicy Squad. Shout out
One
everyone.
more thing,
What was
Brad.
that?
One more thing, Brad. You know
Yeah.
what the draft got me though? This is the real cool moment. I get a text. Would you like to hop on 95.7 the game and talk the draft? I was like, oh wow, that was cool. Shout out to Bonsa. I mean, Shasky wasn't on, but shout out to Bonsa, man. He's cool as hell. That was probably like the icing on the cake, man. Like to be able to do that in the morning too as well, man. That is always you've done the radio before, so you know how that is, man. But yeah, it was
feeling,
so
man.
cool.
When they hit you up like, hey, you were there. We want to hear what you thought of that. You're like, okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
And Bonta's like, this guy's like training camp, the combine, Senior Bowl, the draft. He's like, this guy's just living life, and it was so cool, man. So yeah,
dope.
Again, I am not above, not fanboying, but still realizing how cool all this shit is at the end of the day, man. Like, I know we need to be serious and be professional, but come on, man, how cool is that?
Man, we got to enjoy the ride, man. It's all about the process. Yeah, the destination's fun, but the process should be just as fun. And those are some of the perks that come along with it. That's awesome to see, man. It was great to see. I know it's not going to be your last time on the Morning Roast either. So shout out 95.7, all those boys over there. They know the vibes. So this was a great episode. I appreciate your time. Appreciate everyone again, liking, subbing, doing all that good stuff. Shout out the squad. We'll be back next Wednesday for the State of the Franchise episode. We'll see. And we know the 49ers feels like we're heading into that slow period, but there's just something. I just feel like something's coming. They're going to find their way to make the way to the top of the news cycle, but we'll figure out what that's going to be next week. Again, Jason, thanks for tapping in. SDS, Spicy Squad, shout out everyone. Appreciate you all. Until next time.